got involved in that tussle at the front after the second round of stops. We thought it might have been Montoya getting in front of Michael Schumacher after those second stops. It was in fact Genet who's made his second stop himself, and he is back into 6th place. And Ted has some news for us.
I'll tell you what, James, there's a suspicion down here at Williams and McLaren that Michael Schumacher has got brake problems. Of course, he took all that wing off, so he's got major high speeds, and slowing down is obviously going to be a problem from that. They've noticed excessive dust coming out of those brake ducts. Ferrari, of course, aren't saying anything, but let's see, maybe Montoya might be able to get him under braking.
Yeah, there certainly is a lot of black dust. You don't know the materials that they're using necessarily are the same as the Williams in terms of the pad and the disc, but no doubt about it, there is a plume of black dust coming from the brakes every time Michael hits the pedal. At the moment, he's got a lead of 3.2 seconds now, so Montoya had a second difficult lap. We saw him go a bit deep into turn 1 and lost himself some time. Coulthard now coming under a lot of pressure from Marc Genet in their 5th and 6th. Coulthard's had a 2 or 3 very slow laps, whether he's beginning to, well, not very slow, but clearly not fully on the pace lap. So at the moment, a couple of battles shaping up, 3 in the top 6. So Montoya still with a chance against Michael Schumacher. Barrichello just edging away from Raikkonen for 3rd and 4th. Coulthard and Genet squabbling over 5th and 6th. Now just 2.7 between them.
And you can see that the top 6 place is filled by both cars from the top 3 teams in Formula 1. All once again, the reliability of the leading teams seems to be pretty remarkable. That was an interesting scene. Looked like Flavio Briatore from Renault talking with some of the Mercedes McLaren people up on the timing wall. I wonder what they were having a chat about. Certainly, it's not been a great day for the Renault team. Jarno Trulli is out of the Grand Prix. He retired right at the very beginning, first lap, and Fernando Alonso is a lap down in 11th place. We haven't seen much of him since he took half of the floor off his car, but he is still circulating, albeit a couple of seconds off the pace.
It's taken something away from Montoya. That lap where his charge was halted by the moment of having to lap Frentzen, he's now lost another 0.4 of a second. Suddenly Montoya hasn't got the pace. It really did break his rhythm up. What a shame for us in terms of watching this Grand Prix. But now Michael with a 3.6 second lead.
Well, certainly Montoya won't be giving up. He'll know that there's traffic in the shape here, for example, of Zolt Baumgartner standing in for Ralph Furman in the Jordan team. He'll know that that might take a little bit out of Michael Schumacher's lead. He needs to be harrying the Ferrari driver all the way. He's now got ahead of the Jordan, you can see, and that's another car for Montoya to get past.
Yes, I don't think Michael passed the Jordan as cleanly as he would normally have liked to have done, in that they had to follow him through the Lesmos. But how are we doing on this lap? Still Michael's, it's even Stevens on the first 2 sectors, but as you say, James, there's another back marker now for him to pass. So now we've had 6 retirees: Panis, Verstappen, Button, D'Amato, both Toyotas out then, Wilson and Trulli.
Yeah, just outside the points positions then, outside the top 6. Villeneuve is 7th still for BAR, so that's going to be a very important result for them. If he can hold on to that, that will really put them in a very strong position to hold on to 5th place in the Constructors' Championship, as it looks like Toyota aren't going to score any points today. But if anything happens to Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who is currently 8th and on target to score 1 point, then Mark Webber is ready to pounce in the Jaguar. He's 9th at the moment, just a couple of seconds behind Frentzen. And we've seen that the Aussie is has a never-say-die spirit when it comes to the end of Grand Prix, particularly if there are points at stake. So he may well have a go in the closing stages. Heidfeld is 10th, Alonso 11th, Fisichella 12th, Baumgartner is in 13th, and Chiesa in the Minardi 14th.
That's interesting, isn't it? Still Montoya not past the Jordan. And he's may clear him, but still it compromised his entry. No, he still hasn't passed him. Look, yes, the Jordan gets out of the way, but it compromised Montoya's entry. You hesitate. Is he going to get out of my way or not? And so you still lose time, and it's just not working out in the traffic for Montoya. And then is the scrap for 5th and 6th between Coulthard and Genet, down to just 1.2 seconds. Coulthard struggling for pace at this stage. Genet, well, the quickest man on the racetrack last time around.
Yep, certainly pushing very hard. Super sub There was some talk yesterday, Frank Williams was saying he wasn't 100% sure that Ralf Schumacher would be fit for Indianapolis in 2 weeks' time, but we heard Ted Kravitz speaking before to Sam Michael, the chief engineer at Williams, saying they were pretty confident this morning, having heard from Ralf by phone from Salzburg, that he was feeling a lot better, and very confident that he will be back in the car for the Indianapolis Grand Prix. Certainly it's very important from a Constructors' Championship point of view, although Genet doing a fine job here in 6th place at the moment, and really closing down David Coulthard.
Yeah, well, he's just playing fast. I mean, Michael's doing 22.9 again that lap, and Genet doing a 22.8. Raikkonen and Coulthard pretty similar actually in the two McLaren, so Genet's just playing faster at this stage of the Grand Prix. If it stays like this at the moment, there it's coming up on the screen, that finishing order, Michael Schumacher will lead the World Championship with 82 points compared to Montoya's 79, Raikkonen 75, so it's not working well for Raikkonen. Montoya still easily in the hunt, as indeed will Raikkonen be, but it's looking very strong for Michael, isn't it? He just needs to make sure that Barrichello stays that 1.5 seconds ahead of Kimi Raikkonen at the moment.
So we're getting into the closing stages then of the Italian Grand Prix. Few questions still unanswered. Can Marc Genet pass David Coulthard? Can Kimi Raikkonen pass Rubens Barrichello? And has Montoya still got anything left to try and close down Michael Schumacher?
Here at the Italian Grand Prix, and he's bolting out of that car as well. No more pit stops for these guys as we go back to the enormous demands on the car and the driver, Ryan Briscoe. You've driven at this circuit in an F1 car.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great circuit to go around in the F1, and as you can see there in the second chicane, you just got to bounce the car over the curbs as much as you can, and it's brutally harsh on the car, but they seem to hold up.
Neil, they talked about possible brake problems for Michael Schumacher. I think Juan's in a far inferior position at the moment. There's definitely some problems there. He's drifted out. He's lost 3 seconds in the last couple of laps.
The pivotal moment in all that process, Billy, was lap 42 when he tripped over Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and then he seems to have had the wrong bounce of the ball thereafter. Jordan got in the way, and just it's been a rhythmic thing. And I think you know, when you've got a car that you've been driving at or even fractionally over the limit and something breaks your rhythm and it just puts those vital tenths or even seconds between you and the other guy, you then stretch a little harder to try and get it back, and that's when the little mistakes creep in. Webber, meanwhile, is now lapping just fractionally faster, about half a second a lap faster than Frentzen, and he's got the margin down to a fraction over 1 second with now just 7 laps remaining.
Well, Juan has minimised the damage in terms of championship points. If he can hold second, it's still close with 2 rounds to go, but the big question is, can Raikkonen nail Barrichello and stay within striking distance himself? That is probably the best dice, and certainly one of the most critical still going as we come to the closing laps of this Italian Grand Prix. There's the gap between first and second, but let's watch the gap between third and fourth as we return to our regular commentary.
Lap 47 here at Monza, and Michael Schumacher, who's been matched so closely throughout the race with Juan Montoya, appears to have broken his spirit now, and here is David Coulthard in trouble.
Coulthard with some kind of technical problem pulls into the end of the pit lane. The marshals will then wheel that away. Coulthard out of the race. Genet up to 5th, Villeneuve 6th, Frentzen 7th then now, and Webber in the Jaguar will be in the final points-paying position. Montoya now 7 seconds adrift. He just lost something in a crucial lap there and lost momentum, and Michael now just driving off into the distance. He's not under pressure from Barrichello in 3rd, and Raikkonen can't quite get back on the terms with. And there's another replay then of Coulthard getting out of the car. So the Grand Prix is not quite developed, has it, James? It's sort of threatened to be thrilling, and it looked like Montoya was really coming at Michael for a closing grand finale, and suddenly that's petered away. Raikkonen can't quite get on terms with Barrichello, and we were looking for a good scrap between Coulthard and Genet, and Coulthard's car breaks down. So sadly, not really developing into a classic, although a pretty tense race. Montoya's driven well, but you have to say Michael Schumacher always looked the man slightly more under control.
Yeah, he soaked up the pressure right from the start. The run down to turn 1, he got alongside Montoya. He kept his nerve. Montoya was side by side with him through the first chicane. Michael Schumacher was ahead there, but then Montoya had a major go at him into the second chicane on the opening lap. Michael Schumacher gave him room. They didn't touch. Terrific driving by both of them, and they both came through, but with Michael Schumacher in front and Montoya second. And since then he's tried a few things. The strategy, you'd have to say, looks like it played out really more in Michael Schumacher's favour slightly than it did in Montoya's, but there was really nothing in it. And through the first and second round of pit stops, Michael Schumacher able to maintain his advantage over Montoya. Barrichello, he's done his job this afternoon. Third for Ferrari, taking points away from Kimi Raikkonen in the World Championship. Certainly not down to a two-horse race now, that's for sure, but it's a lot tighter than it was. And Barrichello now coming up behind Heinz-Harald Frentzen, the man who just got in the way at that very chicane of Juan Montoya at a critical moment when he was closing down Michael Schumacher. And somehow since then, Montoya has not had the speed in the car. Something broke in his spirit, his desire to chase down Michael Schumacher. Who knows? Perhaps there was a technical problem, but either way, he seems to have settled now for second place.
Barrichello's hand coming out of the cockpit saying, get this guy out of my way. I'm in a big fight here with Raikkonen. And he believes, and they passed a lot of blue flag stations, he believes that Frentzen should have just eased off, which he's now doing, and letting them through. I would expect another gesticulation, and indeed he gets one from Rubens Barrichello, who's not at all happy. Man who's driving beautifully in the second part of this race. Looked a bit outpaced in the beginning is Marc Gené in 5th place. He's the only man in the 1:22s, quite a bit quicker now than anybody else. Unfortunately for him, he's 11 seconds adrift of this battle between Barrichello and Raikkonen. The gap down to just 1 second now. And Louise is with David Coulthard.
David, something on your car obviously gave up on you. There, any idea what it was?
Well, clearly it was engine, but not entirely sure whether it was a failure in the engine or whether the electronics, because it didn't tighten and there's no smoke. But it lost what felt like spark, so it could have been a problem at the top end, but it could be electronic as well.
McLaren just didn't seem to have the pace today to keep up with the front runners, the Williams and the Ferraris. Were you surprised at that?
Yeah, after the test, I was surprised because all 3 days the car felt better than it did this weekend. I think both Kimi and myself during the race there, I was pretty much alone, but I was just driving every lap wondering where the balance had gone that we had. We had a car in the race which had quite a lot of oversteer, which makes it difficult to attack the corners, drop some wing out at the pit stop, and even then it was quite oversteering. So track conditions have changed obviously since last week, but something else has moved as well.
Thanks, David.
13 runners left then, 7 out of the Grand Prix, and all 3 Brits that started this race. Ralph Furman not starting, of course, so all 3 Brits now out of it. Coulthard, Wilson and Button have retired. It's not a classic Italian Grand Prix for British Grand Prix drivers, that's for sure.
No, it's not, but it's certainly a day BAR will remember, and Jacques Villeneuve. We haven't hardly seen him at all all afternoon, but if they stay where they are, BAR will be 5th in the World Championship Constructors with 18 points. Jaguar Mark Webber today looks like he's going to score a point in 8th place, and they'll be on 16 points in 6th place. Toyota not scoring here this afternoon, and certainly from Villeneuve's point of view, it's been a terrible year, but he had 3 points going into this Grand Prix, and if he stays where he is now, he'll have another 3. He'll double his tally. And a lot of stories about him for next year. Jacques Villeneuve, he's been telling people he might not be in the car for the Japanese Grand Prix, but it may well just be a bit of grandstanding as the negotiations go on for next year. And certainly quite a lot of Italian sources seem to think that Villeneuve will stay in that team. They're just having a very, very tough negotiation.
It's difficult to know in those circumstances. You don't really know the details, what goes on behind closed doors. And there's all sorts of information and misinformation that's let slip as a negotiating tool, whatever, but quite clearly it's not a done deal yet. Ted is down there.
Yeah, just down at Ferrari. They say they haven't got any concerns about the brake wear on Michael Schumacher's car. Nothing concerning is coming across on the telemetry. But remember how easy Michael is on his brakes. Remember in Canada, the team were amazed that he managed to make them last for the whole of the race. So he will be helping that problem if there is a problem.
Well, he looks pretty comfortable at the moment. Just 2 laps remaining here at Monza as he goes into the second chicane, up over the curbs, picking up the speed down 60 miles an hour on the exit there, up to over 130, then into the Lesmo corners. This is where his brother Ralph had a big accident in testing last week, the one that's put him out of this weekend's Grand Prix. And Michael Schumacher now just over 5 miles away from victory at Monza. It would be his